broadcasted live.
Good morning, everybody in India. Good morning and welcome to Deep Talks. And good evening to our viewers in the West, in USA. Reading is a natural process like learning to speak. And when I say there is more to reading than just looking at a word and mugging it up, no, there is much more. So today's topic on Detox, that is Disruptive Talks on Education, and I'm your host Anupma. And today's topic is teaching every child to read and write with no child left behind. And we have with us not anybody, but very important, the genius himself, Bob Baratta, from the Center for Innovation Studies in USA. Welcome, Bob. And there we are very eager to let you hear out and see what you have to say on not letting any child be left behind and how to teach children read and write. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you. You can now go away. Don't take that personally. Okay, before we start, when I get my hands in the right position here, I would like to explain the setup I'm using for this talk. Because at some point, I may have to interrupt myself to correct for pushing the wrong button. I'll be running the slideshow with my left hand and navigating through my notes with my right hand. Both hands will be clicking their own mouse, and for the mouse click to work, the cursor has to be in the right position. I may inadvertently move a mouse out of position and have to pause to reposition it. Also, in the event my cat climbs up on my keyboard, there will be a brief cat moving pause and a repositioning of my hands on each mouse. The title of my first D talk was Teaching Every Child with No Child Left Behind and Letting Teachers Be Teachers. Only a handful of people watched that presentation live. As you may know, quite a few people have watched it since then. I was fine with so few people watching at the start because the presentation ended up taking a little more than an hour and a half. One of my brothers recently sent me a link to a video that he said contained some great talent show auditions that I should watch. The video was 3 hours long. I asked him where in the video were the auditions he thought I should watch. He didn't know. He just expected me to watch the whole 3-hour thing. One guess how much of that video I watched. Right after my first D talk, I added a table of contents to it so that people watching the video could watch a little bit at a time or just pick out parts that might interest them. And if they found a part they liked, they could tell a friend to watch it, just watch that part and not the whole thing. This talk will take about as long as my first one, so I don't expect many viewers to watch the whole thing live. What I would recommend, though, is for anyone who is watching right now, watch at least the first 18 minutes, which will take you through the part about credibility. So you can judge for yourself if you will want to come back later on once I've added the table of contents to this video. I mean, you can also watch the whole thing now if you want, but there's also options for not having to read the whole thing right now. And you can see more of what I have to say. The purpose of my second D talk is the same as my first. Teaching every child with no child left behind. This time, though, it's about teaching every child to read and to write with no child left behind. And by teaching every child, I mean every child 100%. This is the center's website. It now has a D-Talk button on it that links to the video I also made. Oh, pardon me, it links to the video. I also made a table of contents for that video, so people could look at any part that might interest them without having to watch the whole entire presentation. I will be adding a button link to the table. I will be adding a button link with the table of contents for this talk as well. The center's web address is on this slide only for reference, in case you want to find the center's website. The reading@center.edu email address is also only on the slide for reference. People watching the presentation live can ask questions at the end. Anyone watching it later can use that email address to ask me questions you might have. What else should you know before we begin? Free and free again. All the materials I will share with you today are available for free, either from the Center's website or from the Apple App Store. So if you think the reading program we created to teach every child to read and write without exception is something you would like to try in your classroom or in your whole school, it's available to you at no charge. There's much support from the Center through emails, Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, or StreamYard meetings, any way you want, also at no charge. For this talk, if you want to know who Mary and I were as teachers and why we were allowed to throw out the curriculum for both math and reading and start over, you can view that part of my first D talk. You can see the reference for where it is right then. All you need to know for now, though, is starting from scratch is what we were allowed to do and exactly what we did. These are the same 10 no guidelines that I presented in my first D talk. You can see they were our guidelines for both math and reading. Since I don't know how large or small the screen you're viewing this presentation is on, I'll read them for you quickly. Mathematics and reading curriculum guidelines. 9 no's. No textbooks, no workbooks, no worksheets. The reading program uses worksheets, but only in group settings. No homework, no grades or scores, no tests, no teacher-provided answers to problems, no student grouping by ability, no raising hands to answer teacher questions. Everyone in class answers on individual chalkboards instead. The 10th no, no child left behind. Now, the guiding philosophy is none of us is as smart as all of us. With 30 children in a class, each child has 30 teachers, a classroom teacher, and 29 other children. As I said before, those were both the math and reading curriculum. So what I showed before, I talked about before, showed those how those guidelines were used in math. Today I will show you how they are used in reading. Now, for my earlier talk, I had a section where I gave the reason behind the 10 no's. I don't want to have that part be part of this time too, because that's just repeating what was already said. If you want to know why those 10 no's exist, you can see that link there on the previous website. I'm pretty proud of this previous talk. The title of my talk is Teaching Every Child to Read and Write with No Child Left Behind. Leaving no child behind means every child will learn, no exceptions. 100% means 100%, not just 99. Mary and I knew the reading program we had created really did teach every child to read and to write. Every kindergarten and first grade class at our school was using the program, and every single child had learned to read and write. Both Mary and I earned our teaching credentials through a special program designed to recruit teachers to teach in the inner city, with where schools were high rates of academic failure. So for every child to learn to read and write without exception in our school was not an ordinary accomplishment. To see if it would work just as well in schools other than our own, we, with the help of a few of our fellow teachers, made 8 kits that we put in different schools. The rate of success for the 8 classes using these 8 kits remained the same. It was still 100%. Mary and I founded the center in 1975 to provide support for the teachers across the country using our math programs. Use of our math programs spread easily because the materials our books made use of were easy for any teacher to acquire. But the reading program materials did not exist anywhere else. Yes, the program worked, but asking a publisher to commit to publishing a kit of materials that had only been shown to work in 8 classrooms outside our own was not at all realistic. So the center decided to do a really big test of the program's effectiveness by making at least 2,000 kits and distributing them all across the country. The center could not actually afford the cost of making so many kits, so we would pay for the 2,000 kits by finding 2,000 teachers trusting the center enough to buy them. We estimated the cost of producing the kit to be between $1.5 million and $2 million. So the center set the kit's price at $827 each. In just 2 years, we sold 2,048 kits to teachers all across the United States and Canada. The net proceeds from the kit sales were just about $1.7 million, which pretty much covered the costs. The center made up the difference. The one requirement we had for all the teachers purchasing these kits was they evaluate its effectiveness and send their evaluations to us. We encourage each teacher, school, or district to use any method of evaluation they chose. The results, 248 classrooms. No one failed to learn to write, no one failed to learn to read or to write. Success rate, still 100%. This is the center's website. As you saw earlier, the current site has a DTalk button added to it. But this slide and many of the ones that follow were originally part of my first DTalk presentation and were set to one side because they would have made that talk too long. Can you read that book title? It's meant hard to read. It's pronounced Decode If You Can. You'll learn more about that book later on. Clicking on the book's cover takes you to the center's reading program download page. This is a Baratta-Lorton reading program page. I'll talk more about this page later on. When Mary and I were first trying to come up with a name for our reading program, every name we could think of was already taken. So we could just call it the Baratta-Lorton reading program because at least that name was not already taken. However, once the program was in wide use, the teachers using it simply called it that hard to read name, Decode If You Can. That is why in many of the reviews that follow, you will see the two names used interchangeably. See the arrow, the little arrow? It points to a teacher review section. Clicking on the Decode If You Can book cover there takes you to the teacher reviews and comment pages. There are 6 different links in this teacher reviews and comment section. I'm going to share with you excerpts from the first 3 links. This is from Martha D. She's the first in that of the 6 evaluations that are there. This is the first one. Martha wrote her 2-page letter to a principal who was contemplating using the program in her school. She forwarded a copy of it to the center. Since I don't know the size of the computer screen on which you're watching this presentation, I will read the first 3 paragraphs of Martha's letter to you. You can read the rest of her letter on her own. I am delighted that you are contemplating the use of the Baratta-Lorton reading program at your school. I'm always happy to share concerning its use in my classroom. 5 years ago, I piloted this unique program in our school system. My kindergarten class generated a lot of interest in the community and around the state. Numerous people came and still come to see children involved in active learning. Since every child, regardless of academic background, was successful, our school system added more units. It is now used in all kindergarten classes, many first grade classes, and in special education classes. It has even been successful with hearing impaired children. In my 19 years of teaching experience, I have never known any other approach which meets the development needs of every child. The second link is to a letter the second link in the list is to a letter of recommendation. The second link is to a letter of recommendation Tricia wrote for a teacher who was applying for a teaching position in Washington, D.C., and who wanted to bring her reading kit with her to her new job. Tricia forwarded a copy of the letter to us. We'll read 2 paragraphs from this letter to you. I have used the Decode If You Can program with my non-readers for the past 18 years. My students are a testament to this program, and I have never, and she wrote never in capital, I didn't put that in for her, had a child leave my classroom. Most are with me for 3 years, unable to read. Since many of my students are mentally retarded, that is speaking volumes. I will temper this statement with the fact that not all of these students will spend their lives reading for leisure, but it will help them be better able to navigate their world. Many of them read to get by in the interdependent lives they lead day to day. However, for many of these students, parents and teachers alike could not envision that they may have actually learned to read in the first place. When I first started with this program, many of my students had Down syndrome and most could not read. They left my class as readers around mid-first to second grade level. Today, many of my students, because of the diversity that Cornell University brings to Ithaca, are ESOL or ESL students. ESL means English as a second language. students on the autism spectrum and MR, which means mentally retarded. This program is amazing in that it is accessible to all who strive to learn to read English, and for those who are ESL, MR, or autistic. It adds bonuses to their learning by using visual clues, articulation of sounds, and multiple meanings of the words, language they are reading and learning. The third link is to letter sent to center by an elementary education major at the University of Tennessee who used the program when she herself was in kindergarten. I will read 4 paragraphs from this letter. I am a senior elementary major. I'm a senior elementary education major at the University of Tennessee at Martin. I can personally testify to the phenomenal success of the Dekodiphukan program. Every kindergarten class at the elementary school I attended used this program, and by Christmas break of each year, the kindergarten hallway was covered with creative stories written by the students. And by that same time, most of them were reading at least 2 grade 2 level books. My middle school and high school brought in students from my elementary school, along with students from 3 other elementary schools that did not use the program. Students from my school, who all learned to read and write with Dekodiphukan, formed a disproportionate number of the spelling bee finalists and of the top 25% of my graduating class. Teachers could tell just by listening to a student read whether she or he learned to read using Dekodiphukan. Learning to read with Dekodiphukan was so much fun that even now I can remember learning to read. I have never met anyone else who learned to read a different way, who remembers the joy of learning to read as I do. But several of my peers who learned to read with me still remember the Dekodiphukan story and the stamps and look back on it with a smile. Additional links you can read on your own if you wish to further confirm. Let me slow down and read this correctly. The additional links you can read on your own if you wish to further confirmation. When I say 100%, I mean 100%. Link number 4 is a copy of a 2.5-page letter a teacher who had used the program for a year wrote to her school's district reading selection committee, asking that the reading program be considered for district-wide adoption. Link number 5 is a selection of quotes taken from the hundreds and hundreds of evaluations the center has received from teachers using the kit in their classrooms. The 6th and final link is to an article written for the Alabama State Department of Education by the Director of Instruction of an Alabama school district that had piloted the program, and then extended its use to all kindergarten, first grade, and special education classrooms. The 2 article subheads in this link are Fail-Proof Method Teaches Reading Fast and Every Child Learns to Read 100%. Why so much emphasis on credibility? The materials Mary and I created for teaching reading and writing don't exist anywhere else. And the approach we came up with would definitely be viewed as strange and even implausible if I simply introduced it to you without your having any evidence in advance that the approach actually works and works well. Literacy is a problem in India. Literacy is a problem in America too. According to a study conducted by the U.S. Department of Education, 15% of adults in the United States cannot read. In addition, 1 in 4 children in America grow up without learning to read. According to a U.S. Department of Justice, nearly 85% of the juveniles who have faced trial in juvenile court system are functionally illiterate. High rates of literacy in both America and India can be attributed to a variety of factors. To teachers, though, the causes, poverty, family background, lack of reading readiness, language barriers, uneducated parents, or whatever else might be thought of as a source, do not concern me. I am a teacher. It is my responsibility to teach every one of my students to read and to write, no exceptions and no excuses. Roughly 85% of the children will learn to read regardless of the method we use of them. Abraham Lincoln learned to read out of the Bible. Many children learn to read by simply sitting in a parent's lap and as the parents read a book to them. I learned to read through books in school that had stories of Dick and Jane and Baby Sally. There wasn't anything magic about these books. I would have learned just as well if different books had been used. Because the 85% will learn to use any method, we came up with, Mary and I focused our attention on finding ways to teach the bottom 15%. Any method we found that would work, which we teach the bottom 15%, would still teach the other 85, since the method used didn't matter to them. First step, analyzing the problem. This is the word cat. Children who can read look at the word and say cat. The problem is not the children who can read cat. The problem is the children who cannot read cat. Children who have difficulty in learning to read have 1, 2, or 3 main problems. Now that's the case where I meant to do this one, read this one first, and the next one comes second. So I'm now getting my mouse coordinated again. First one is perceptual. First problem, perceptual. Before children can read, they need to recognize letters and be able to tell one letter from another. An A can look like a D, a T can look like an F, an N can look like a U. B's and P's and D's and Q's are also visually confusing to many children. Okay, I'm backing up. Let's see. Okay, this is back. I'm back to the solving problem thing. Oh, wait. I said sometime I have to mess up. I messed up the slides because my finger on the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. So we're back to perceptual. Okay, now this slide. A first grade child read this problem as 4 plus 3, 11, 7. We see an equal sign. The child saw 11. Second problem, a child who knows what the letters are, and then, okay, let me slow this down. The second problem, a child who knows what the letters are, then has to know what sounds the letters represent in this word. In this, is the C sound like the C in cup or in city, or like the C sound in the church he or she may go to on Sundays? How many different sounds can the letter A stand for? At least 6 that I can think of. And this is true for every word the child faces. The third problem, a child who knows what the letters are and knows the sounds the letters represent still has to blend the sound into a word. A child who has difficulty blending the sounds into a word may say cow or at or something else altogether. That blending should be, well, you get the message. Now the slide that says solving the problems. The goal then is to isolate the problem so the child who has any one of them can deal with each one of them in its turn. When I teach my students math, before I have them use numbers, I introduce each activity using manipulative materials instead. Once my students understand the concept completely using manipulatives, I then link that concept to the numbers or letters we use in mathematics. The number of letters we use in mathematics to record each concept. We call this concept connecting symbolic. Four plus 3 equals 7. 9 times 9 equals 81. 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4. 1/2 times base times height equals area. Every one of these is a symbolic record of a concept of mathematics it's already understood. The problem for reading is that the child have to start right off at the symbolic level before they're even allowed to understand the concept. This is no problem for the 85%, but the 85% is not my concern. They are going to learn to read anyway. This picture represents the sound of a stick breaking. Its sound is a k. This picture represents the sound of a baby crying. Its sound is an ah. This picture represents the sound of a clock ticking. Its sound is t. That's the t. Now we get to this. K, at. These sounds are k, at. Put together, they are the word cat. I think you can see now why I emphasize credibility at the start of this talk. How can I possibly suggest that children can be taught to read even before they know the letters, using sound pictures instead of letters? To teach my students math, I make use of manipulatives to introduce them to various concepts of mathematics. I introduce numbers only after the concept is understood. The numbers have no meaning of their own. They exist only to record real world. They exist only to record real world events. When we teach the numbers by themselves, we leave some students behind in the learning process. When we use manipulatives first, and then use numbers to record the concepts already understood by everyone, we leave no student behind. The sound pictures are the manipulatives in reading, just like beans and cups and tiles are the manipulatives in math. The question is, once you have the manipulatives, what use do you make of it? Remember I said children who have difficulty in learning to read have three main problems? Here's how the sound pictures deal with each problem. First, perceptual. Visually, the pictures are used to represent sound are very different from one another. In one of the earlier versions of the program, one of the sounds was represented by an image of a girl with pigtails standing next to a stool with her arms raised. A second picture representing a different sound showed only the upper half of a girl with straight hair who also happened to have her arms raised. Even though the girls were quite different both in appearance, the fact that both had their arms raised caused some children to confuse the two sounds with each other. If these two very different pictures could confuse some children, imagine the confusion caused by B's and D's and P's and Q's and M's and N's and U's. Back up. The problem when you're pushing buttons to get things to happen is if you push the wrong buttons, the wrong things happens. Okay, second, sound symbol. The whole point of the sound pictures is to eliminate any sound symbol confusion. The sound picture represents a single sound. The picture of the stick breaking only represents the sound k and cat and never s in city. Now we're to the third one, blending. Blending still has to be taught, but now it can be taught separately without also having to deal with the perceptual and sound symbol difficulties. Now we get to this one. There are 44 phonemes in English, and as it says here, phonemes mean distinct units of sounds. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, and these 26 letters are arranged in various ways to spell the 44 phonemes that are used to form all the words in English. So where do the reading program's 44 sound pictures come from? Decodiphukan is a book that teaches children. Decodiphukan is a book that teachers use to introduce the students to the sound pictures that will be used to represent the 44 sounds in English. The book introduces the 44 sounds. How the students actually learn the sounds comes next. First, though, I will read you a little bit of the book. It is written in rhyme because the best way to hear a phoneme sound is at the end of a word. Page I will be reading. Oh, I should say the page I will be reading are screen captures from the Decodiphukan book app, which is why there are little play buttons on them, and also why the pages turn. In the mystical land of Dekodiphukan lived a very old king who was really quite grand. One day the king whose name, by the way, was just I, sat down one day and began a long cry. Oh, he cried and he wouldn't be stopped, and his tears made a flood that couldn't be mopped. I'm embarrassed to say I'm not fit to lead. Should a person be king who can't even read? Why, king, dear, you know that by no real plan, no one can read in Dekodiphukan. We've all tried to read, but can't handle the load, for in our special land, all's written in code. Your father before you changed all of our print, then went straight to heaven and left us no hint. Now, the next page I will read will be page 8, because I'm obviously not going to read the whole book to you. On pages 5 through 7, two children named Neil and Tina show up in response to the king's request for help. They will be joined later by a child named Curly. Page 8 marks the beginning of their search. Oops, I forgot to read page 4. Oh, well. You tried and you tried that code to reveal, and each time you fail, the sadder you feel. So let's get another who willingly tries. And if they succeed, we'll give them a prize. Since we have no children of our very own, the Dekodiphukan could be the next king on the throne. Now, the fact that the slides, I sometimes don't need what the slides say, is because the slides are on a different computer than my presentation. But pretty close. At least I got back to that page. Now we'll get to page 8. This is page 8. Now, what will we do? Neil knew he should ask, and Tina replied, it's this page that's our task. What's the very first thing we surely must do? Why, look through the pictures and search for a clue. The dog in this picture, I'm sure I did see. As we came into town, it was guarding a tree. They rushed to that tree to see the dog closer, but the growl that he made made them say, closer? No, sir. His growl was so fierce they stayed where they were, while that dog bared his teeth and kept saying, The first sound is from the first sound of the reading program or Dekodiphukan this is the picture that represents the sound It's the first of the 44 sounds that's now been introduced. The teacher then posts this picture on the wall. The book provides the rationale for why it teaches each sound, but as I mentioned earlier, the children actually learn how they learn the sounds comes later. Hello, said a voice from way up in the tree. Don't mind my dog, he's protecting me. Well, tell him we're not here to hurt you at all, and come down from that tree, you really could fall. A tree's not the best place I know to be living, but I ran here to hide from a fright I was given. I was busily helping my mother clean house, when out from a cupboard there jumped a big mouse. I spied that big mouse and screamed aloud, ee, and ran from my house and climbed this safe tree. Second sound is now introduced. Teacher posted that sound on the wall too. It's the sound E. As he spoke, that old mouse ran right where they were, and that dog, and again he screamed E, while his pet dog growled E, were the sounds to be heard. And Neil looked at Tina and said, that's a word. I think that the code has just started breaking, for ear is the word in the sounds they are making. Two pictures together can make a whole word, like the E and the of the sounds we just heard. So off to the king will now rush with great haste to tell him his code is on sounds wholly based. Now, we're going to hear Sam's story. The 44 sound pictures are the manipulatives we created to use to teach reading. But simply having a manipulative is no use by itself. What matters is what you do with it. When Mary and I decided to focus our attention on creating our reading program, Mary was teaching first grade, and I had taken on a special education position at our school. For six separate hour-long sessions each day, I would meet with 2nd through 5th grade students in groups of 2s and 3s. They were pulled out of their classrooms for time with me. All of these students were children who had either not learned to read or were just barely getting by on reading. My task was to make readers out of all of them. Mary's first grade class, she introduced her students to all 44 sounds, and then had her students use the sounds to read all kinds of words like squirrel and hippopotamus and anything else that came to mind. What Mary was doing in her class was fine, but it was not something any of my group of students could manage. Sam, who was one of my 5th grade students, could not even begin to read the kinds of words most of Mary's first graders were already handling with ease. Sam could not even remember all the sounds, let alone string them together to make words. If I said 3 numbers to Sam like 147 and asked him to say them back to me, he could do it. He could say 147, but if I said 4 numbers like 1395, he couldn't repeat them all back to me. I found this interesting. 147 was 4 syllables, and so was 1359. Sam could remember one set of 4 syllables and not the other. Obviously, Sam wasn't counting syllables. He was just hearing numbers. Sam 7 was 2 syllables, but it was just one number in Sam's mind. He could remember a 3-number sequence, but not a 4-number sequence. I mentioned before there were 3 basic problems faced by children who had difficulty learning to read. There is a fourth. Memory is the fourth one. What could we do about Sam's ability or lack thereof to retain information? Sam could not read the longer words that Mary's first grader had no problem with, because before he reached the last sound of the word, he would already forgotten the first sounds. What if we gave Sam words that were only 2 sounds long? And when he had learned to read 2-sound words, we can give him words with only 3 sounds in them. Some of which would even contain 2-sound words that he already knew how to read, like the 2-sound word tea that is in the 3-sound word team. Then once Sam could read 2- and 3-sound words, we could have Sam read phrases made up of only 2- and 3-sound words. That might work. But what good would it do to give Sam 2- and 3-sound words to read when he couldn't remember all 44 sounds? So for Sam, we would have to have words he could read when he only knew 2 sounds, then 3 sounds, then 4 sounds, and so on. So for Sam and children like him, we rethought the order of the sounds introduced into Decodiphukan, and made a list of the 2- and 3-sound words that would accompany the introductory of each new sound. If we made these changes and more for Sam, could he then learn to read? The answer was yes. The Decodiphukan story I read to you earlier is not the Decodiphukan story we started with. To meet Sam's need, we had to change the order of the sounds, so more 2- and 3-sound words could be created with fewer sounds introduced. Sam's story is just one example of how many changes we made to the program as we were creating it. Every time we found a single child who was not learning with the program the way we had so far, we changed the program to meet that child's needs. In the appendix, this is the Decodiphukan triangle level, the first 8 sounds. In the appendix of the program's teacher's manual, there is a master word list of 2- and 3-sound words. These are words that can be formed as each new sound is introduced. As a child knows the first 2 sounds, the program with process learning to blend 2 sounds into words begins. When the teacher continues to teach the blending process, the whole class as each new sound is introduced. Student activities do not begin until the first 8 sounds have been introduced. The 8-sound level is called the triangle level. All the materials at the triangle level have a little triangle on them, meaning you have to know only the first 8 sounds to read these activities. I will show you the teacher's 2-sound flipbook in a little bit, but first I will teach you the 8 sounds of the triangle level. So it comes to actually remembering what each sound. Oh, wait. It says, first I will teach you 8 sounds. So if you're watching this presentation in real time, you will not be able to hit the pause button or rewind button to review any of the sounds I tell you. So when it comes to actually remembering what they are, I will help you. In an actual classroom, it is not important for each student to know every sound as long as other students know it. Because as I have said earlier, none of us is as smart as all of us. And with 30 children in the class, each child has 30 helpers, the classroom teacher, and 29 others. So as long as one child in class knows a sound, all of the children can know that sound as well, just by asking. And once any student knows all the sounds, the teacher is no longer in the teaching loop. Children now turn to each other for help with all the sounds. Here are the first 8 sounds. This is the sound It's a sound at the end of the word were. This is a sound E. It's the sound at the end of the word tree. This is a sound S. It's a sound a snake makes when it's hissing. It's a sound at the end of the word fuss. This is a sound N. A boy named Curly, I mentioned Curly was going to join Neil and Tina after a while. When he flies in to join them, he comes in on a plane, and the sound that the engine on his plane makes is the sound N at the end of the word alone. This is a sound T, which may remember from cat. It's a sound of a clock ticking. It's a sound at the end of the word nut. This is a sound O. O goes with a look of surprise. It's a sound at the end of the word no. This is a sound K, as you already know from cat. It's a sound of a stick breaking. It's a sound at the end of the word luck. This is a sound I. The king's name is I, as in I the king. Now you know the first 8 sounds. Actually, you probably don't know them all, and that's a lot of information to absorb all at once, particularly when you can't, if you're watching this live, you can't go back and repeat anything. But at least you have heard the face-out sound. At least you have heard the first 8 sounds, and the children would, let me slow this down, but at least you would have heard the first 8 sounds the children would know as they start their triangle level activities. I mentioned earlier that the Dekodiphukan book provides the framework for why the sound pictures represents the sound they do. The teacher's 2-sound flipbook that I will show you now is what is used to actually teach the children the sounds. They teach the blending of sounds into words. The flipbook is large enough to be seen by the whole class. The 8 words I will show you are from the 2-sound flipbook. They're just samples of how additional words can be read as more sounds are known. Standing in front of the class, the teacher, I jumped ahead. Okay, standing in front of the class, the teacher shows page 1. This is the first page of the 2-sound flipbook. Notice the 2 beneath the triangle. It means that it uses the first 2 sounds of Dekodiphukan. All the words and phrases for all the activity have an arrow that shows the children where to start when reading. The teacher has the class follow along with him or her, and while pointing to each sound as it is said, says, sounding out ear. Say it with me. Ear. Sounding out ear. Ear. Once a word has been sounded out, the teacher asks the class what picture they expect to see on the next page. Reading means comprehending what is read. It does no good to read a word if you do not know what the word means. What do you think will be on the next page? Well, that's why this is a flip book, by the way. This word, the number on the triangle is 3. By the way, more words can be made with 2 and 3 sounds. I'm using these words represent the new words that can be added as new sounds are known, but more, I'll worry about that later. This is sounding out C. C. Teachers often think that the transition from sound pictures, next one. This was EC. What do you think you'll see when you turn the page? Seeing. All right. This word, I'm going to see if you can remember what the sounds are before I do anything. See if you can picture what they were. It's okay if you can't, because I'm going to review them for you. This is knee, sounding out knee, e. It's okay if you have a little trouble when I ask you to remember the sounds. If you do, then you're experiencing what, even if I have to read the sounds or try to blend them into the words, you experience the same meaning readers have to do as they learn to blend sounds into words. This, if you remember, these words, these sounds you learned earlier, that was first found in the Dekodiphukan and also the clock ticking in cat. This is eat, sounding out eat. There's eat. Oh. If I don't sound it out for you, you can go toe. skipping down because, okay. I'm having the text catch up with the words now. The Three-Sound Flipbooks is used to teach, the Three-Sound Flipbook is used by the teacher both to teach the sound and to teach the sound blending process. There is another purpose of the 2 and 3 sound flipbooks. The 2 and 3 sound flipbooks also teach vocabulary. For many students who have difficulty in learning to read, the problem is that they are not fluent in English. ESL students have English as their second language. The 2 and 3 sound flipbooks teach the meanings of the words that children will be learning to read so that no child is asked to read a word without knowing its meaning. See, before I tell you if you can do it, see what this word might be. Key. This is a picture that uses sound from the first 8. See if you remember the sounds. Clock ticking, and the king's name is I. I. Tie. The triangles at the 2 sound level are plain. The triangles at the 3 sound level have a happy face. The 2 sound flip used by the teachers. 2 sound flipbook is used by the teacher to teach sounds and to teach 2 sound blending. When children know the first 8 sounds and have been taught 2 sound blending and the meaning of all the words they will be reading, the reading program activities are to begin. As more sounds are known, more activities are introduced. When 16 sounds are introduced, circle activities begin. When 24 sounds have been introduced, square activities begin. When 32 sounds are known, rectangle activities begin. And when all 44 sounds are introduced, star activities begin. Once the first few children are ready to begin 3 sound activities, the teacher uses a 3 sound flipbook to teach 3 sound blending to the entire class. And 3 sound activities are introduced. Students ready for 3 sound activities are not separated out. They work alongside the children still at the 2 sound level. The numbers below the triangle still indicate the number of sounds that must be known to read the word. I will show you 5 examples of 3 sound words that can be read as more sounds are known. This is 3 sound blending, triangle level. You can see the number before that below a happy face triangle is 4. That means before you can begin 3 sound activities, the children have to know at least 4 sounds. This is nurse. Nurse. Tree. Tree. Snow. Snow. Crow. Crow. Tire. Tire. What I've shown you so far is a book. What I've shown you so far. Oh, an arrow to press. Okay. What I've shown you so far is the book that introduces the 44 sounds, and the 2 sound and 3 sound flipbooks the teacher uses to teach the children the sounds, sound blending, and vocabulary. These 3 things are for the teacher to use. What comes next are the materials used by the students themselves. For children, the reading program has 4 components: books, picture packets, worksheets, and stamping, which is also creative writing. Each of the 4 components is set up as a separate workstation that the children rotate through each day. One purpose of the station is to reduce the amount of teaching materials that are needed. If, for example, all the children are reading books at the same time, there would need to be several books for each child in the room. When children rotate through workstations in small groups, less materials are needed. A second purpose is to provide the children with a variety of activities each day, all of which accomplish the same learning goal. Learning two and three sound blending in a variety of ways makes what is actually a repetitive process not seem repetitive at all. There are actually 5 components of the program. The 5th component teaches children the letters of the alphabet, how to say them, and how to write them. This is in preparation for when the children are ready to transition from the sounds to letters. But learning letters is not connected in any way with the reading activities until the concept of reading and writing has been mastered. Thanks to Sam and other students like him, each of the 4 components has 4 levels: 2 and 3 sound words, first level, phrases, transition, and vowels only. First materials, books. This is a page from one of the triangle level 2 sound books. For all the books, the word or words are on one page and the picture of what the words represent is on the next. The reason for this is to give each child a sense of the power of reading. The child reads a word and then forms a mental image of what to expect on the next page. I'll read the word, eat. When words or pictures are on the same page, the beginning reader can look at the picture and guess the words. Here's an example of a 3 sound book. Tight. And a phrase book. Phrase books are all at the heart level, which means students already know all 44 sounds. That also means you don't know all the sounds in this phrase. It says 2 boys. In a transition book. At the transition level, children are now linking letters to sounds they already know how to read. You can read this one on your own. Now for picture packets. Here's an example of a picture packet at the 2 sound level. This slide is actually a screen captured video recording from a Picture Packet Words app. For the app, the child slides the sound word to its matching picture with his or her finger. The screen captured video shows the sliding of the words, but not the finger sliding. There are 38 picture packet envelopes in the kit, with 10 pictures in each packet for a total of 380 pictures. For each of the 4 separate levels of the program, there are envelopes with words or phrases in them coded to match each of the 38 picture packets. As the children move from level to level, what they are asked to read changes, but the pictures they use remain the same. The children lay out all 10 pictures and then work together to match each word or phrase to its correct picture. They work in groups of 2s or 3s, never individually. So they can always help each other with remembering the sounds in the blending process. If children in one group cannot decipher a word, they simply ask other children around them for assistance. Asking the teacher is a last resort. And even if the teacher is asked, the teacher simply poses the question asked to the whole class for an answer. None of us is as smart as all of us, and the answers to nearly every question a child asks during reading can be answered by other children in the room. When traditional letters are introduced, the teacher will have to become the question answerer again to explain why meat is spelled M-E-E-T and M-E-A-T, and why there are 3 different ways to spell the word two. Letters are confusing. Sound symbols are not. Eliminating the confusion while children are first learning to read is the whole point of the reading program in the first place. Using the sounds makes learning to read and to write so simple that children have no trouble teaching each other. This is a picture packet from the 3 sound level. It's still a screen capture from picture packets. This is a picture packet. This is a screen capture from the phrase level. Notice it's the same picture that we used at the 2 sound level. These phrases are examples of the 2 and 3 word phrases made up of 1 and 2 or 3 sound words that help turn Sam into a reader. You can see the pictures are the same as we've used before. This is a screen capture for picture packet at the transition level, still the same pictures. As I said, the fifth component in the learning process teaches children the letters of the alphabet. At the transition level, letters are now put to use. More about that coming up. Picture packet, vowels only level. This is a screen capture of a picture packet at the vowels only level. Still the same pictures, of course. Next, worksheets. While children work in groups of 2s and 3s for picture packets, they complete the worksheets on their own. However, the worksheets are completed at the worksheet station where children doing them are all working side by side. So help from a classmate is right there if needed. This is a 2-sound worksheet. The child reads the words and underlines the answers. The teacher decides what he or she wants each child to do when a worksheet is completed. The child can simply erase the answers and exchange the worksheet for another one, or the teacher can have the child ask another child if she agrees with the answers underlined. Or the teacher can also have the child just, the teacher, let me get this right, keep the right buttons here. The teacher can have a child the teacher can also ask children who are just starting at the worksheet station, pardon me, to bring their first 1 or 2 completed worksheets to him or her for a quick check. Checking by the teacher is quick because each worksheet has a code on it that tells the teacher at a glance the correct answers. The code is in the lower left-hand corner. The solid line indicates the correct answers. For this work, the 3 correct answers are all in a row on the left. I'm going to back up. For this one, this is a 2-sound one. The answers are all in a row on the left. This is a 3-sound one. The code sheet for this worksheet indicates the 4 answers are formed 2 diagonals. Now for the phrase worksheet. Back up. I'm sure you noticed on the worksheets, they have lines beneath them, the sound words, and some of the sounds have codings beneath them. The children are told just to ignore the lines and codes for now. Their use will be explained later. Now the phrase worksheet. When children know all the sounds and can read 2- and 3-sound words, they begin the phrase level. All the phrase level activities are of course coded with the heart, since all the activities require the use of all 44 sounds. Children moving from 2 and 3 sounds phrases will not automatically read every word and every phrase correctly at the start. However, each phrase on the worksheet has 2 pictures from which the child is to choose an answer. A child who cannot read every word uses the word or words he or she does know in the worksheet's pictures to figure out any unknown words. After phrases, wrong button, back, down. Okay. It'd be nice if the computers be side by side. Oh, well, you can get over it. After the phrases comes the transition level. There are no new worksheets introduced at the transition level. Transitioning means linking sounds to their spellings. Remember concept connecting symbolic? This decoding chart is a connecting device. The decoding chart shows all 44 sounds and their spellings. The sounds on the chart are in the same order as they were introduced in Dekodiphukan. They're also in groups of 8 to match the triangle, circle, square, rectangle, and star levels of the program. There is no need to introduce new worksheets. For the transition level, the worksheets already used are used again, only this time the lines and codings have a use. Remember I mentioned before that there were you could see the codings underneath some spellings, there were lines on there. For this demonstration, though, I will use a screen capture of the same worksheet from the iPad app. Because okay, wait. Okay. The reason the 2-sound worksheets are used again at the transitional is because the reason the 2- and 3-sound worksheets are used again at the transition level is because they permit the children to learn the use of the decoding chart 1 8-sound level at a time. because the children already know how to read every word on the worksheets. They are now simply learning the traditional spellings of the words they already know how to read. They are connecting the symbols to the concept. Look at the first sound of the first word on this worksheet. There's a yellow box underneath it. These are the first 8 sounds on the coding chart. Can you see that sound? And can you see that sound and what its yellow spelling is? I'm right. I'll write that spelling on the worksheet. Now, what is the second sound in the word? Note that there are no codings beneath that sound. That means we will use its white or first spelling. Can you see the white or first spelling for the sound? I'll write it on the worksheet. Now look at the first sound in the second word. No coding, so we'll write its first or white spelling. Look at that sound on the decoding chart. Look at its white spelling. We write it on the worksheet. Now look at the second sound in the word. It still has a white spelling, but there are 2 stars beneath the sound. The stars mean write that white spelling twice. So we'll look back for the E sound, white spelling, write it twice. Now, look at the first sound in the third word. It's a white spelling. So we'll look at the decoding chart for the spelling, the white spelling of T. I'll write it on the worksheet. 1 sound to go. I've seen the yellow coding before. That was 1 sound before. As children make continued use of the decoding chart, they begin to anticipate and then internalize the chart's spellings. What do you think I will find when I look for the yellow spelling of this sound? Do you remember it? Children go through all the 2 and 3 sound worksheets they have already done. The triangle level worksheets use only the first 8 sounds. The circle level uses the first 16, the square uses the first 24, and so on. By the time they are ready for phrases, by the time children are ready for the phrase worksheets, they are already decoding chart experts. This is a phrase worksheet. There is a new symbol in use on this page. I'll get to that symbol shortly. Sightword Worksheets. At the transition level, the children also are introduced to Sightword Worksheets. The Sightword Worksheets contain more than 150 different words that make up a large percentage of all the different words beginning readers will see in books they read. Words like is, to, and, that, not, for, at, with, and so on. There are 4 different levels of Sightword Worksheets. This is level A, but this is level A, B, C, and D. This is a worksheet from level A. The A level worksheet contains words that only use first spellings of the decoding chart. There are 25 words on each worksheet, but as you can see, the worksheet actually contains only 5 different words written 5 times each. Children are told to read each word and then use the decoding chart to write it. Whoops, back up. I almost forgot this part. This is a test strip for the words. Children are told to read each word. Okay. Children are told to read each word and then use the decoding chart to write its spelling. Each child completes the same worksheet as many times as he or she wishes. When the children feels he or she knows the spelling for each set of 2 worksheets, like A1 and A2, for example, the child gives a test strip for these 2 worksheets to another child who reads it to him or her. This is the test strip. Any child who can read 2 and 3 sound words can be a tester. The tester reads the words to the child, and the child then writes them out on a piece of paper without using a decoding chart. When the test is complete, the child takes it to the teacher to check. The teacher's manual appendix contains a printable page with all the Sightword test script words for the teacher's quick reference when checking the word list. A score of 100% means move on. If a child misses any word, he or she continues learning the spellings from the same worksheets until every word has been mastered. The 10 No's guideline said no tests, and this is definitely a form of test. But this test does not come with a grade. It simply lets the child know there is more for him or her to learn and exactly what that additional knowledge is to be. This is a B-level worksheet. B-level worksheets contain words that use all the spellings of the sounds on the decoding chart. There are still 25 words on each worksheet, written 5 times each. The reason the words are written so many times on each worksheet is because, in addition to the worksheets teaching the children the spellings of so many basic words, the worksheets also help the children internalize the spellings on the decoding chart. When a child reads a word on the Sightword worksheet the first time, the spelling for the word sounds have to be looked up on the decoding chart. The spellings may have to be looked for a second or a third time, but by the fourth or fifth time, if not before, when the child sees the word sound, he or she already knows the sound spelling, what the sound spelling will be. You can write that word spelling without even referring to the decoding chart. The repetition lets every child learn the chart spellings naturally without ever being required to do so. This is a C-level worksheet. There are still 25 words on each C-level worksheet, written 5 times each. The C-level worksheet contains words that are used all the spellings on the decoding chart. They also each contain a symbol that you would have first seen on the phrase level worksheet earlier. The shaded rectangle is used to represent letters that appear in words that are silent. They make no sound, like the E that appears at the end of the word have. Children learned the use of this symbol when they used their decoding charts to write letters for the sounds in the phrase worksheets. Beneath the shaded rectangle is a symbol. The bottom row of the decoding chart lists all the letters of the alphabet with a symbol above each letter. When the shaded rectangle is introduced on the phrase worksheets, the symbols are also color-coded. It makes finding them easier. The C-level worksheets have the symbols without the color coding. This is the final level of the Sightword worksheets. This is level D. There are 30 words on the level D workshops. Each time, these are written 3 times each instead of 5 times each. The D-level worksheets contain words that use all the spellings of the sounds and sight letters as well, just all mixed together. And now for the fourth component. The fourth component is stamping, which also includes creative writing. This is a stamp tray. 3 sets of stamp trays are included in each kit. 3 sets of trays is enough for a whole class because stamps are only used at one of the learning stations, and because many students can use the same tray at the same time. The stamps appear in the tray in the same order as the sounds were introduced in Dekodiphukan, and they're also grouped the same way on the decoding chart. There are stamping worksheets that children use to give them practice using the stamps or to stamp out words. I'm not showing any of them here because the actual purpose is just to keep the children at the stamping station occupied until all 44 sounds have been introduced. Once the 44 sounds are all known, the real purpose of the work is once all the sounds are known, the real purpose of the stamping station begins. The real purpose, by the way, creative writing. Here is a demonstration of what stamping can do once the sounds are known. Do you remember the sound from this first date for the first date? It's I. By the way, since you don't know all 44 sounds, I will read the words for you we'll see what I do. See if you remember the sounds for this word. 2 of them were in the word cat, and the other one is the sound of Curly's engine. It's can. These are sounds all from the first 8. It's the I, t, right. Here's the last word. The sounds you don't know yet. Anything. I can write anything. Once all the sounds are known, creative writing begins for everyone. When a student knows all 44 sounds, they are free to stamp or write any words they want, however well or poorly they may perform stamping at the start. The one any word rule I get my students is that they can write any words they want, that as long as it would be okay for me to show the words they write to their mother. What is stamped at the start may be a word or it may be longer. That's the child's decision to make. When a child has something stamped out, he or she then draws an illustration for the thing stamped. The pages of each individual child's work and pictures, the pages of each child's individual words and pictures are then stapled together as books. Writing what you want and not what someone tells you to write is called creative writing. The free stamping of words are the students' creative writings. Some words stamped out at the start may be too long for others to read because the words may go beyond 2- and 3-sound words that students are failing to read. Words may also be missing sounds or have included extra sounds or have sounds in the wrong order. None of this is important at the start. The logical progression of learning, represented by the 2-sound, 3-sound phrase, transition, and vowel sequences activities, still occupies the majority of each student's reading time. But the logical progression cannot capture for the child the excitement that comes from being able to put his or her own words on paper, or the feeling of power that writing affords when what has been written can actually be read by someone else. Even that someone else at the start may initially only be the teacher, and even that someone can only read what is stamped out with a few subtle hints from the illustrations that accompany the stamped out words. The writing efforts of the children will improve over time. They will gain more knowledge as they pass through the reading program's various levels. They will also gain more knowledge as the teacher helps them learn to listen to the sounds and words they wish to write. They do not have to wait until they have learned enough words to spell, and just how long would that have taken them? How many kindergarten or first graders do you know who can sit down and write out anything they want? There is no hindrance. Children who cannot spell a single word with letters can write anything they wish, even if their first efforts may not be readable by anybody but the child who has actually done the writing. Now they see themselves as writers and as readers. Now all the components and levels that they are going through at all the other learning stations have a purpose they can see and feel, to make them better at something they really want to do. The combination of children helping children learn and children being able to write anything they want makes it possible for every child to learn, to read, and to write while leaving no child behind. At the start of this presentation, I read you excerpts from teacher evaluations of the reading program, so that you would have a reason not to reject what I was going to show you as just too strange. When this presentation is over, go to the Center's website and meet all the teacher evaluations of the program there. Now that you have seen how the reading program goes about teaching every child, you can better understand what the teachers who wrote those evaluations were talking about. I meant what I said at the start. 100% means 100%, not just 99. We never leave a child behind. Math manipulatives are not language specific. They can be used by children everywhere, regardless of the language they may speak. The Center's reading manipulatives are not language specific either. Do you remember this word? It's C. C. How do you spell C? Here are at least 4 ways. C, S-E-E, C, S-E-A, C the letter, and C, S-I, accent mark, Spanish. The fourth 3 is Spanish word for yes. Among the teachers who were using the Center's 2048 reading program kits in their classrooms were several ESL teachers. As I said before, ESL stands for English as a Second Language. For these teachers, the language spoken in the home of many of their students in their classrooms was Spanish. These teachers asked us to create a Spanish version of the program for use alongside the English version in their classroom. So with their help, we did. Spanish language does not use as many sounds as English, and the 2 sounds it uses are 2 of the sounds it uses do not. I'll slow down and say this slowly. The Spanish language does not use as many sounds as English, and the 2 sounds it does use are not among the English 44. This is a decoding chart we made for the Spanish version of the program. This is a set of stamps made for the Spanish version. Once there were English and Spanish versions of the program in the ESL classrooms, students whose native language was English could learn to read and write Spanish as well as English. And students whose native language was Spanish could learn to read and write English. Well, whatever, but each language, because you get it. Students can read one, could read the other, anyway, the language is interchangeable. The process of learning to read was the same. Sounds are sounds, and sound blending is sound blending regardless of the language you speak. I took Spanish in high school, and in California, Spanish was spoken all around me as I was growing up. Most of the Hindi I know I learned from reading the English translation of the Hindi lyrics of my favorite Bollywood songs. But at least I can count to 4. Ek, do, teen, char. Over the years, as teachers using the program have retired, some have either passed their kits on to others, or I guess writing after char. Okay. Over the years, as teachers using the program have retired, some have either passed their kits on to other teachers or returned the kits to the Center for Redistribution. The most recent kit return for redistribution was sent to a school in Texas 3 years ago. Before then, one of the returned kits was sent to a school in India to see how it worked there. It worked quite well. Language sounds are not language specific. Some languages use more sounds than others, and some languages use sounds other languages do not. But all languages use sounds, and the process of blending sounds into words is the same regardless of the language used. I mentioned at the start that the materials I would show you would be available for you for free if you wanted to use them. This is the center's homepage, well, without the button, of course. Clicking on the Dekodiphukan book cover takes you to the Baratta-Lorton reading program page. I should say, I'm giving you the whole page, but I'm taking you a section right here. There's an arrow pointing here to the reading program video presentation. Teachers in the United States who download the kits have already nearly always either used it in their own classrooms or seen it in use in someone else's room. Because its existence is not advertised anywhere, so they can't have seen it anyplace else. However, those of you learning of the reading program's existence for the first time through this presentation have never seen the actual program. Video presentation takes you to a video of a workshop a much younger gave to a group of center math instructors when the program was first being introduced. The video presentation introduces viewers to every component of the program. And shows each component in actual use. It shows the real kit in action. The video is divided into 15 parts, so it's easier to view, just like I chopped into table of contents for this. The video is divided into 15 parts, and the contents of each part is labeled beneath it. The last 3 sections of the video are devoted to questions from the workshop participants. The teacher answering the questions has, of course, used the program in her own classroom. I'm back to the slide you can see now the arrow here points to the classroom kit download. The same page that had the reading program video as the presentation link also has the classroom download link. Clicking on this link takes you to the reading program page. It's a reading program matrix on that page. When you look at that page on your computer, you may scroll down to see the matrix. This matrix contains the download links for all but one of the kit's components. The blue links are for components, the blue links are for components the students will use. The red links are for teacher materials. Components in green do not represent links. These components represent materials being used again in different ways, like the 2-sound, 3-sound, and phrase worksheets being used again at the transition level, and the things that teachers and the students will make together. The guidelines that Mary and I use as a basis for our math and reading curriculum say no homework, but the matrix column on the far right has it as title Parental Involvement and Homework. The children will be the ones taking the homework home, but the purpose of the parental involvement in homework activities is to teach each child's parents and siblings about the program being used in the child's class at school. It's how we give the program credibility in the eyes of the parents. Now look in the upper half left-hand corner of the matrix. The teacher's manual link is there. It's also available here. Center page, there's the teacher's manual. Clicking on that takes you to the home page. I said the matrix contains the downlink. I said the matrix contains the downlink links for all but one kit component. The missing component is a set of stamps that comes with each kit. The stamp set is not exactly downloadable. The first cell in the stamping and writing column has two links in it. One says stamped fonts and the other says stamp making. Both links take you to the same page. This is called the sound fonts for a computer page. Now, this page earlier, the page that pointed to the reading program video and the classroom planner also had a link here called Read Pro Font Download. If you click that link, it takes you to the same page. Read Pro is the name we gave the downloadable font for the 44 sounds. The sound fonts for a computer keyboard page allows anyone who wants to add the reading program's 44 sounds to their list of computer links. Okay. There are 4 links on this page. Let's see where it says. Okay. It says Windows zip files, Mac zip file, keyboard template, and stamp making templates. The first 2 links let you add Read Pro font to either your Mac or PC computer. The third link takes you to a keyboard template. This template tells you where on your keyboard to type to produce each sound. There are 44 sounds. These are the 40. Okay, this is an example of Read Pro. This is the example of Read Pro font on my Mac. I stamp out each sound using 44 different sizes. I stopped at 44 different sizes because there are 44 sounds, but the sound fonts can be any size you want, just like any other font. So one of the reading program elements that cannot be downloaded can be typed. The fourth link is to a stamp making template. All it takes to make as many sets of stamps as you want is to take a page like this to any stamp maker, just like Mary and I did at the start. Below the stamp making template is a link to a set of instructions on exactly how you have stamps made. So if you or your school wants a kit, it is yours for the making. In my first talk on math, I talked about how we use every child in class to teach everybody else to read. Teach everybody else. And we don't move on until everybody else understands. For arithmetic operations like addition and subtraction, we use beans and cups and different bases to repeat the lessons so that the children who understood more quickly could help every child understand as well. We did not move on until everyone understood because we never leave a child behind. Reading is the same. We have the children who understand more quickly help every other child understand as well. No matter at what level a child may be working, we never separate that child who knows from the child who does not. Everybody is there always to help everybody else. The reading program allows everyone to proceed at his or her own rate, while still working side by side. Every child helping every other child leaves no child behind. And just as importantly, never holds a child back. Downloading all the kits, components, and assembling a classroom kit takes a lot of work. I know because the kit you see now only exists because of all the earlier kits and components Mary and I made and then had to discard because they didn't work. It's always a lot of work, but for me the question was always, is making it possible for every child to learn to read and to write without exception worth the effort? And for me, the answer was and is always yes. When the iPad was first introduced back in 2010, I decided to make an iPad version of it, of the version of the reading program. This is a screen capture of an iPad. There are 14 iPad apps. If you count them, you'll see there are actually 15 apps on the screen. What looks like the 15th app on the screen is actually, here's an arrow pointing to it. See on the center's website, it's the guide button. If you click on that button below the guide button, you get to, this is basically the guide. It tells how to use each of the 14 apps. So what appears, of course, as an app on that first screen is just a link to this app. All the apps are, of course, free and available from the App Store under the, I should go back to this, to the apps again. All the apps are, of course, available for free and available from the Apple App Store under the search word Dekodiphukan, spelled the funny way. The apps are not meant to serve as a replacement for the classroom kit. They are useful for tutoring individual children and adults and for homeschooling, but cannot match the classroom kit's ability to teach every child. The most effective teaching component of the classroom kit is that it allows every child to help every other child learn. Apps cannot replicate that experience. And now we are at the any question part. The first two questions, we will be joined shortly by our host, but I already informed our host that the first two questions I'm going to answer are questions that I already been asked by teachers. The two most common questions I get when I ask questions in America. First question I get is from teachers who say, most of my students, hello, I'm asking my first question now. Oh, you would already know that because you've been watching. Most of my students can read. Can I just use the kit for ones who cannot? My answer was, or is, when Mary and I first began using the program in our classrooms, we were both teaching in the same school. Mary was teaching first grade and I was teaching fifth. My fifth grade students knew, wait, let me get the cursor in the correct place. My fifth grade students knew the reading program I was having them use was also used by Mary in the first grade. What I told them in my classroom was, in the fifth grade, it's used to teach reading. In the first grade, it's used to teach, pardon me, in the first grade, it's used to teach reading. In the fifth grade, we use it to teach spelling. There are three reasons why I call it a spelling program for my fifth graders. First, because what fifth grader would want to be using a reading program that was being used by first graders? Second, because as a spelling program, all of my students would be using it, not just the ones poor at reading. How children feel about themselves is very important for learning. If only the poorer students use the program, then its use would mark them as inferior to their classmates. The best part of the reading program is that it allows children to teach each other. If I don't want to leave any student behind, then the students who do understand must always be available to help those who do not. When every child is using the program, then every child is available to help every other child learn. And everybody learns without exception. And third, it really is a very good program for teaching spelling. Now, second question that I get asked a lot, and this you wouldn't know to ask yet because I showed you the Dekodiphukan book, and it had the author is Bob Baratta-Lorton. There are a lot of Dekodiphukan books that say the author is Robert Baratta-Lorton. So the question I get is, people say, I've seen the Dekodiphukan book for sale on Amazon and eBay, but the books there have two different names as the author. Why? In English, Bob and Robert are the same name, as are Bill and William, Jack and John, and so on. The Dekodiphukan books that have Robert Baratta-Lorton as author on them were the ones included in the original 2048 kits. And as we were giving workshops across the country to sell the program to teachers, we gave everyone who came to any of those workshops a copy of Dekodiphukan that had Robert Baratta-Lorton as the author. When the center made the kits available as a free download from its website, many teachers downloading the program asked the center if it would be possible to get an actual Dekodiphukan book to read to their students. So I uploaded a copy of the Dekodiphukan to the Lulu website. Lulu is a company that prints books one at a time only when a book has been ordered for that copy of the book. For that copy, when I uploaded Dekodiphukan to Lulu, I changed my name on the cover the cover from Robert to Bob so that I could tell a Lulu books from the original ones. So if you see an Amazon book for sale on eBay or Amazon that has Bob Baratta-Lorton as the author, someone has simply purchased a copy of the book from Lulu and is reselling it for a higher price on eBay or Amazon. If you happen to want an actual copy of the Dekodiphukan book, the instructions for ordering it from Lulu are on the Reading Program's webpage. Lulu ships books from anywhere in the world. Pardon me, Lulu ships books to everywhere in the world, including to India. Next question. Now the moderator gets the turn. Well, then I'll ask the next question. One of the things I mentioned when I was giving my presentation, I said that we sent a kit to India. A logical question would be, what happened to the kit we sent to India? The kit was sent 16 years ago, way back in 2005, to the City Montessori School in Lucknow. The kit was mailed, but I soon joined it because I was already going there to give math workshops for teachers. I met with a teacher assigned to use the kit by Dr. Gandhi, and the teacher using it later told me she read the whole book in a day after I gave it to her. The kit we sent was not sent up in one person's classroom. Instead, it was put in a reading resource room so more students could take turns using it. When I first saw Dr. Gandhi's Global Dream Literacy materials, I was pleased to see that her materials mirrored the center's use of sound pictures as teaching tools, and her program also mirrored the center's starting point of 2 sound words. I mentioned at the start of my presentation that 85% of the children will learn to read regardless of the way they're taught. But what happens if that 85% that could easily learn to read is not even given the opportunity? India has the largest population of illiterates in the world because so many in that 85% group were never given the opportunity to learn to read in the first place. What Dr. Gandhi's Global Dreams Literacy Program does, and does well, is give those 85%ers a start at becoming the readers they always could have been. A person spending 30 minutes a day for 2 months with his or her own tutor is off to a great start. Of course, this format would not help Sam or children or adults like him, but Sam is not the target audience of a program like that. And the Global Dream Literacy Program serves this purpose quite well. I do think that the program could be more helpful to Sam and children like him, and maybe this is already part of the program, of which I'm unaware, if there were something like a decoding chart displaying all the sound pictures and their spellings on a big chart placed on the wall in the homes of every adult or child using the program. Then children like Sam would not have to remember so many sounds. The sound pictures would be there, written symbols, and be always there for their reference. As I said earlier, all languages use sounds, and the process of putting sounds into words is the same regardless of the language used. Now you're here. Now you can turn on my slides and go up here bigger. Can you hear me? I'll wave. Can you hear me? Should I make up another question? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do escape. Okay. And stop sharing. Okay. Now at least they're bigger. Are you on mute? And what do we have an edit feature? So we can edit this out of the eventual video. Well, while I'm waiting, if you're watching this video later on, remember that one of the slides I had was the email address. Any questions you have, since this is a question answering period, even if you're watching live, you can still email me a question at reading@center.edu with the center spelled the USA way, not the Canadian way. Oh, I see there's a comment here where you could chat. Oh, it says, Madam, now she knows you're on. Oh, she's on mute. I see mute on her. I see she's on mute. You're mute. Oh, wait, let me do this. Am I still live? Yes, I am. So I'll be very careful what I say. Hello, Sunita. Sunita G.
Hi, Bob. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome,
Okay, awesome.
welcome to the session.
Okay. So
By the way, could you see my mutes? I could see where it had. I've done that before, where I'm on mute and don't know it. But
okay.
My little icon says mute.
Yeah. No.
Maybe when they edit this, they can have a little blip where our silence. I don't mind if the silence stays, but we have to have a night saying, "Stay through the silence," because we're talking. We're going to talk to each other again.
Yeah. Yeah. So
welcome back. I love the fact that we are all human.
Yes.
We cannot escape that fact. Could you hear? Could you hear what I was saying when I asked? Remember, I said it was a question you might ask. Well, I asked that question for you because I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again. So I asked 3 questions. What would you and I like to know?
What would I like to know? I've really appreciated how you blended the sounds together and to form words, and the 44 phononyms or the sound
phonemes. It took me a long time. I had to my slide had to write that out.
Yeah, so it was
what that thing is. Phoneme.
Yeah, so it was so brilliantly you've taught us how this whole thing works and how we can get the sounds together. And I'm sure our audiences have also learned so much And in fact, Dr. Gandhi's perception also of the Global Dream Toolkit is so much similar. But obviously, what you have told us has added a feather to the cap.
Oh, I
So
love
it
what
is,
Dr. Gandhi. Did you hear my talking about the kid in India?
yes,
What I see what Dr. Gandhi is doing is I view that as great. What she's doing is great.
yeah, yeah. So that is really, really amazing. And we can add so many things to the toolkit after having listened to you. And I'm sure our audiences would like to ask more questions related to what you have been talking about. And I'm sure they've also seen where to post questions. So it was so great to hear you, and we look forward to another session with you another time, and to learn how we
Like how to
can.
jump rope.
Sorry.
I did math and reading and writing, and I would do how to jump rope.
No, no, no. And especially, that sounds you said that the tick tock of the clock, or of the snake, the hiss of the snake, and how you put together those sounds, and how do you form ear, and how the students learn. It's an absolutely new concept. And I think with this kind of concept, no child really will be left behind, and no child should be left behind. And everybody will, all over the world, we can really get rid or eradicate literacy poverty and go ahead using your technology. So it was great having you on the show, and wishing you all the very best. This is Anupma Mahajan signing off, and thank you so much, Bob, for being with us.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. It's nice to see you briefly.
Okay.
I'm glad you
Thank-
finally got back to talk to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You have to get rid of me. I can't get rid of you. Bye.